Number one tight end, Dalton Kincaid. Everyone has him first. um, Dan, we'll let you start us off on our last prospect of the day.
Yeah. So Kincaid, if God, what's not to say? I love Dalton Kincaid. Obviously Dynasty Nerds we're a big Kincaid company, and he is just the perfect fantasy football tight end. His route running is great. His hands are amazing. And I will just tell everyone that if you're not big into film and you just want to watch one game and kind of get a feel for Kincaid, the USC game last year, not the bowl game, the regular season game, he ate up like 16, 17 targets. He broke 200 yards. It's just a lot of fun to watch. And then, go watch the Pac-12 championship game as well. Kincaid is going to get the draft capital where we're going to see him on the field right away. And we're going to know right away what he's going to look like at the next level. He is more receiver than he is blocker, which I love for my fantasy football tight ends, but he can block as well. So I just think out of this tight end class, this is, as we can see with our rankings, all three of us agree this one's just like a slam dunk, top of the class type of guy.
Brian.
Yeah, to veggie back on what Dan was saying, if you listen to Rich Dotson describe Dalton Kincaid, Rich Dotson of Dynasty Nerds, I believe the phrase "husband material" was used in the broadcast. So let me just play devil's advocate just a teeny bit for Kincaid. He is going to be 24 in October. There's a back injury there, and there's the whole. He didn't produce until what's his face? Queef was injured, right? So there are those concerns. So even taking that into account, the fact that I easily have him as my one, I think kind of says something. Here's the thing about tight ends. People are like, "Oh, blocking gets you on the field. You can't." But first of all, he's an underrated blocker, particularly in blocking that isn't in line, I'm not an X's and O's guy really, but in the trenches, straight ahead run blocking, or if you're asking him to go up against a really good edge rusher, yeah, sure. But if he's like pulling, or I think they call it, what do they call it? Like stalk blocking or something, right? Like if he's doing those types of blocks, he's actually not bad. Right. So it's not like he's a complete zero there. But even so, I kind of don't GAF about whether or not a tight end can block well. Like, in a sense, it's good because the NFL will like him and give him an opportunity. What I care about is route participation. On what percentage of the quarterback's dropbacks is my tight end running a route? That's what I care about. So say, for example, if Michael Mayer's snap percentage is, I don't know, 85, right? Something, really high, right? And Kincaid's is, I don't know, 67, right? Something like that. But Kincaid's route percentage is like, 79, right? And Mayer's is much lower than that. What the hell do I care? I want fantasy points, right? It can maybe affect a red zone play here or there, but the way that the way that NFL offenses are moving, they're gonna have the blocker in line with Kincaid out there in the slot. Like, if there's one tight end that has the opportunity to be a real difference maker and separator at the position, I'm not saying as good as Pitts and Kelsey, but like where you're saying he is now giving me positional advantage, it's Dalton Kincaid.
All right, Steve.
I mean, there's really not much left to say about this man. Dan and Brian said basically every amazing thing about him that I would have probably thought of saying, to be honest. But I mean, yeah, he is slightly inexperienced, just 1 year of high school football. So he is still growing into his position as a tight end, and it is tough to really grasp the tight end position as a whole early on in your career. You need to develop, understand, learn. So he's doing that. Again, he could end up being a really good blocker eventually. Again, he might not have the actual strength to be a true blocking tight end, but I think, like Brian said, he will be able to develop probably into a pretty decent blocking tight end where he's good enough. He might not be great, but he's good enough, and he's got that receiving upside that we already seen in his game there. Again, really excited to see where he ends up at the next level here, because I think he can make a major impact for an NFL team and definitely for our fantasy teams.
Well, you guys heard it here. 10 prospects. We all delivered it under an hour. If you guys...
One more.
Oh, one more? What you got for us, Brian?
Elijah Higgins, right? Went to the Senior Bowl at 225. They said, go practice with the tight ends. Showed up at the combine at 235. If he comes into the draft and the NFL team drafts him as a tight end, he might be in that mix with like Schoonmaker and Kuntz and Mallory and stuff for me, you know. A name to watch if he's drafted as a tight end.
I like that little nugget. Okay.